This is Marco Santello, director of the Brain Center, Donna State University. And let's see, assume you can hear me okay. You could see the video. I'm going to show you 3 rooms. One, we do TMS, which is transcranial magnetic stimulation. And we also do a water tank test for ultrasound stimulation. So let me turn the camera here. This is Jacob Schuler, an undergrad and for-postman student here, who is has been working on a lot of things, including setting up this rig here. Jacob, do you want to tell us something about this?
Yeah, sure. So we have a hydrophone. Typically, it's in the box today, mounted on an XYZ gantry that has very, very fine precision. It's wrapped in 2 layers of thermal insulation to keep the temperature, at least at average room temperature consistent within a degree Celsius. And it allows us to essentially characterize our different ultrasound transducers under different sets of parameters, which allows us to do different sets of stimulation and kind of see with the highest stimulation, the lowest stimulation we can use to elicit a response in human subjects. And it's all automated.
Thank you, Jacob. And also we run simulations to understand what safety parameter we should be within when we do human experiments. And then I'm introducing Michael Ruta, an undergrad student here. Yeah, he works with Jacob, and it's in between what I want to show you. This is a rig for transcranial magnetic stimulation. And what we do here, as you can see, there's a chair there, or a couple of chairs for subjects to sit. And then we have a rig around the chair. We position the TMS coil. And we do experiments, during behaviors, including reaching and grasping. And we assess either corticospinal excitability, or we deliver repetitive TMS to induce virtual lesions. And now let me zoom. And here's another student here, a new PhD student, Fadi Gagas.
Yeah, my name is Fadi. I'm just a new PhD student working in the lab.
And he's interested in prosthetics, which is one of the things I'm going to show you in a moment. And then let me zoom. Sorry if I give you, if I make you dizzy by walking around with my phone, but I figured that would be easier than moving around with a computer. She's Arshana Misore. She's a PhD student. And Arshana, you want to tell us what you're doing here?
I'm trying to study control mechanisms in the lab. I did my master's thesis also in it, and I'm continuing the same work during my PhD. I plan to use transcranial focused ultrasound and EEG to study different control mechanisms.
And then do you want to show what you have there?
Sure, yeah. So this is like one of the bigger transducers that we got recently. We use it for focusing, and it can focus up to almost like a range of like 60 millimeters into the head. And we have an interface of like waters so that it couples with the skull properly. And here we have a bunch of smaller transducers that we are planning to use in an ultrasound array system so that we can do electronic focusing.
Thank you, Archana. Okay, the next, I'm going to go to the second room. I'm going to show you a different setup. If you just give me 1 sec, I'm going to turn off the camera for a few seconds so you don't get dizzy. And let's see here. Okay, so now we are in a different room, as you can see right now. So this room has a number of setups, namely, we have a virtual reality setup here, which consists of 2 haptic devices called phantoms. And we kind of set them up to study grasping and manipulation of virtual objects. And we then combine EEG, nerve stimulation, and a number of other techniques as the subject manipulates to different kind of dynamics, different gravity, different kind of property of the object, etc. Then this is a motion capture room. These are infrared cameras that are all mounted around the workspace where we can study grasping. And the person in charge of this project is Yen Woo-soon, who's a postdoc in the lab. And Yen is going to tell us a little bit about what he's working on in this room.
So what my work mainly is using the motion capture system and some force sensor to measure the grasping force the subject need to use And sometimes we will also combine the EMG system and EEG system to know how the brain interact with the object using hands.
Another thing that Yan is doing lately is to look at you build the setup with the force and torque sensors in your hand on that, and you can adjust it to different hand sizes. And we're looking at the training of a finger individuation, like similar to the one that you need, for example, to play an instrument or to type, and trying to understand the interaction between peripheral and central factors that enable or interfere with the finger independent control. And with that, I'm gonna now, just let me show you very quickly the kind of object that Yan uses. So we built this in the lab also. We use commercial available force torque sensors. But then one thing that we created that didn't exist before is a setup that allows you to grasp the object and unconstrained contact. And so you see this long area here. And so by grasping the different contacts, we discovered different kind of mechanisms, both cortical and anticipatory control, etc., that you introduce when you don't force subject to grasp the object at a constrained point. And next, I'm going to take you to, let me just turn off the video for just a couple of seconds here. And I'm going to show you the last room. In the last room, I'm going to show you a couple of setups. One is the one that Archana mentioned earlier, that is to do ultrasound simulation of human subjects. And the other one is a robotic setup, which is called a keen arm, which is fairly well known in the field of motor control, which is basically a robotic reaching and grasping, actually reaching in a force field. So let me start off with the setup of the keen arm. And so this is also a setup that Michael, shown here, and Jake the subject sits on the keen arm, and you could probably see here there is a monitor that the subject sees, and the hand position is then reflected through the monitor. And so the subject doesn't see the hand. So you could see the hand, you could see a cursor with overlaid kind of data. It could be the score for a particular game you're playing. And the robot, of course, can be programmed to offer resistance as a function of velocity, as a function of position, etc. So it's a really, it's a well kind of established kind of setup for studying sensory motor adaptation and learning. And of course, we combine this with EEG, combine this with EMG sometimes, and we also combine this with TMS. Thank you, Michael. And then the last thing I want to show you is our setup for transcranial focus ultrasound. So again, Archana is going to tell us a little bit how that works very quickly.
So basically, we usually take the MRI scan of the individual, and we with certain, so there are certain markers that are placed on their face, and their face is basically registered, or rather, I'd say the head is registered with respect to the MRI, and then that allows us to use this pointer and actually pinpoint to different locations, and we can actually focus the beam. Also, we place like an additional marker on the transducer, so once we have decided which position we would like to target, the transducer can be placed accordingly on the head, and that's basically how we target. You can also take different samples of the exact location that we're targeting, and yeah, and we use this also for targeting using TMS.
Yep. So okay. Thank you, Archana. So to wrap up my quick lab tour, so as you could see, we basically use a number of complementary techniques, from measuring brain activity to interfering with brain activity or enhancing it. But the key kind of the common denominator is that we look at human, motor control, human behavior. And so we often use more than one technique to kind of unravel the complex interaction within the brain and the periphery, muscles, reflexes, etc. And with that, I conclude, and thank you for your attention.